Welcome to the brand new medical series on the Narcolepsy Navigators podcast, where real stories meet expert insight. In this special series, we're diving deeper into the medical side of narcolepsy, not just the condition itself, but the often overlooked comorbidities that many of us face. From sleep apnea and heart disease to high blood pressure and even dementia, we'll be unpacking how these conditions interact with narcolepsy and what it means for our daily lives. We'll be sitting down with leading experts to ask the questions that matter. How can we prepare for these challenges before they catch us off guard? What tools and treatments can help us manage them effectively? And most importantly, what can we do to slow down the progression and protect our long-term health? Whether you're newly diagnosed, a long-term warrior, or supporting someone you love, this series is here to empower you with knowledge, clarity, and practical advice for the journey ahead. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's explore the full picture of narcolepsy together.
Hi, welcome to Narcolepsy Navigators. I'm Fred. I'll be your host for today. And I have a currently undiagnosed sleep disorder. And we're here with my co host, Bernadette.
Hello, narcolepsy type 1.
So today we're here with Dr. Caitlin, and she is an expert on sleep health and menopause and how those two things relate. And she's here with us today for our bonus series, which is our medical series. So, hi, Dr. Caitlin.
Really nice to be here and delighted to be part of your medical series and excited to be talking about menopause and sleep.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you. So, this is our new medical series. I believe you're our second episode in this series. So, we're super excited to have you as well. And I know that you mentioned that your specialty is menopause as it relates to sleep, but you don't necessarily do specifically with narcolepsy, that you tend to refer those out. But Bernadette and I were talking earlier about how a lot of the issues that you see with menopause and sleep, you were talking about like insomnia and sleep apnea. Those are very common in narcolepsy as well, and in central disorders of hypersomnolence. So we would love to hear about that.
Would it be helpful for me to give just a little bit of background?
Yes, that would be wonderful. Some background about yourself.
Super. So, as you said, Fred, I'm an expert in sleep, but my background is I started off as a family doctor, so working with the whole family for lots of different reasons. And then, actually, about just over a decade ago, I developed insomnia myself. And was finding that I was awake in the middle of the night, really struggling to sleep, finding that I was tossing and turning, and then waking up the next day and not being able to function and feel my best. And I kind of went back to my own medical training thinking, I'm a doctor, I must know about sleep conditions. And actually, nobody had really taught me about sleep. In medical school, it's mainly missed off the curriculum, both in the UK and actually across the world. They tend to teach about obstructive sleep disorders like obstructive sleep apnea and about sleeping tablets, but lots of the time your kind of general doctors haven't been taught about sleep. So I recognized that there was a real gap in my knowledge. And as it turned out, actually, I was going through a premature menopause, which took a little while to figure that all out. What happened was I then went on to this huge journey of discovery about what are the triggers for sleep, what are the hormone balances that are needed, what are the different treatments, both from psychology, psychiatry, sleep medicine, but also Eastern medicine, all of those things that come together to really help and support sleep. And to cut a long story short, I managed to fix my sleep. I'm now a really good sleeper. But it was such a kind of life-changing journey for me that I then have kind of dedicated my medical career to helping people sleep better, particularly during menopause and menopause transition, which is a real hot point for sleep problems.
So, how much, if at all, do you incorporate or elicit information about holistics like meditation and therapies of massage therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, etc.?
For me, particularly related to sleep, it's really core to what I do, because I guess a good way of explaining it is if you think back to our hunter gatherer caveman times and you were wandering around out in the open, you haven't made it back to the cave before it turns dark and you're alone and you're vulnerable. Are you going to sleep well? And the answer is no, you're probably not going to fall asleep. And if you do, it's going to be in fits and starts. And that's because our biological mechanisms that keep us alive, that have been evolved over millions of years, are designed to not let us sleep when we feel unsafe or in a place of danger. And that's because our sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight or stress response, is designed to inhibit sleep, because having a nap while there's danger around you is not a good idea. When you're in sleep, particularly deep sleep, you're very vulnerable because you're not aware of the environment around you. When you're dreaming, your muscles are paralyzed to stop you from acting out your dreams. And so sleep is a really vulnerable time. And so we've evolved mechanisms that when we're stressed, when we're anxious, we don't sleep. And if we do sleep, we don't sleep as well. But we're currently in a situation where there's lots of triggers within the environment around us, modern living, emails, stressful work, always on culture, that actually are preventing us from switching into that relaxation mode and helping facilitating sleep happening and allowing good quality sleep, that actually training our minds to switch off at the end of the day with whichever method works for us is really key to getting good quality sleep. And for some people, that's meditation. For others, it's breath work. And often it's about finding that key to help switch off your mind in association with lots of other behavioral things that are needed to establish good sleeping patterns. And that often when we're sleeping poorly, we might change what we do, how we think, and how we behave. That actually can be a bit counterproductive to getting good sleep.
Have you found any correlations that work with the disrupted sleep patterns of menopause and of sleep disorders associated with exercise or extreme sports, or doing any kind of cardiovascular or anything like that to try to bring yourself to that place? Where does it help, or does it actually hinder it when you actually are in this kind of state?
Yeah, it's a great question. And in general, exercise, sport is really good for sleep. And it almost doesn't matter which type of exercise, almost all of them are good for sleep. And it's about finding exercises that you enjoy and can do consistently. As you get older, it seems that resistant training or weight training is probably the best type for improving sleep quality. But actually, as long as you're moving your body consistently and regularly, that will help improve your sleep, particularly the deep sleep. And deep sleep is really important for feeling refreshed the next day.
So, how did your journey go from GP to having insomnia, and that got you interested in sleep problems and insomnia and fixing that? How did you kind of merge into the specialty with menopause?
So I'd actually always been a menopause specialist. As a family doctor, I tended to see a lot of women. And within the UK, gynecology is not necessarily separated from general practice. There's specialists, but the main core of women's health is dealt with by family doctors. And so I subspecialized in women's health, and I've always been really interested in kind of menstrual cycles, normal cycles, periods, kind of the menopause transition. But then there's not very many people who put those two things together, the interest in women's health and sleep. And as anyone who's had a period or been through the menopause knows, the two are very intrinsically linked. If your hormones are all over the place, then you're probably going to be sleeping poorly.
Okay. So, what are some things that you should expect when you go through perimenopause and menopause to change with your sleeping habit?
Okay. Now, sleep issues are really common during menopause transition. So that's when you're still having cycles, but you might have some menopause symptoms. So when you go through the menopause, which is 12 months without a period. And it's estimated that between 60 to 80% of women will have some sort of sleep disturbance during that time. So that makes it one of the most common symptoms of menopause, but it also is one that impacts our lives considerably, because all of our menopause symptoms feel worse after a bad night's sleep, but also sleep is so fundamental for pretty much every function in your body, whether it's your appetite control, your hormone control, your weight control, your repair and regeneration, your memory, your emotional stability, and your interaction with others. All of those are really key aspects that are controlled by sleep. And so, whether you're sleeping poorly, having so many poor sleep quality, whatever happens during that menopause transition time is going to have a profound impact on how you feel and function during the day and the severity of pretty much all your menopause symptoms.
I have seen lately that now, being that I have this sleep disorder and I've had it for a very long time, I was diagnosed in 99. I was always told, do not take melatonin because it will only substitute the little bit of the sleep hormones that you need. And then it can make you sleep even worse, basically.
Mm.
Today, I see a lot of people that are actually being prescribed or being told to give pretty high doses of melatonin to their children to get them to sleep. And it's like red flag, just boom, 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 to me. And I tell all my friends and the people that come to me with the melatonin questions because I have a sleep problem. I tell them, don't be giving your kids melatonin, send them outside, run them around in circles. I don't know, do something, but don't start getting them hooked on melatonin. Do you actually suggest melatonin to normal people, or do you actually look at other avenues rather than substituting that?
It's a great question, and it doesn't have a simple answer. I would say in the vast majority of people, whether they're children or adults, there are simple solutions, particularly around kind of behaviors and bedtimes and our relationship with sleep and whether we're feeling anxious before we go to sleep. That if we work on those things, we can solve the vast majority of sleep problems without using melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone of the circadian rhythm, so our 24-hour cycle and how it controls night and day, and it's secreted overnight to help support our sleep. There are some conditions where it is very helpful and there's good evidence for it. So if you're a shift worker or if you have jet lag, it's very useful for moving our kind of timings. For some children with ADHD or autism, it can be helpful for supporting sleep. But I would say in the vast, and actually in the older adults, so over 55, there's some evidence that melatonin can be helpful in supporting sleep, but it's not a silver bullet. It's not likely to solve things on its own outside of those conditions. And actually the behavioral and supportive things that we can do, both with kids and adults, can completely change our relationship with sleep without the need of melatonin. And anyone who is thinking of using melatonin, it's really important to first talk to a healthcare professional, particularly a sleep expert, because there's a really good chance that we can fix their sleep without needing melatonin. That's not to say that melatonin is dangerous, but why be on something sometimes for years if it's not needed? And often, particularly in the States, but in other countries too, it's licensed as a supplement. And so when you buy it from the pharmacy, the dose that you're getting isn't always completely regulated. And so you just need to be a little bit careful.
Yeah, my next question would be basic, almost in line. Is it that it should be used as a temporary and never as a long-term fix? Like you said, that when people get into it and are using it for a year and a half, it should really be a momentary fix for when you have a bad night, or is it something that you could take long-term without wrecking your system's ability to make it on its own or to give off those sleep hormones on their own?
Yeah, so it shouldn't have an impact on the kind of intrinsic hormones that we produce, but it's one of those things where I would always recommend the behavioral and the kind of the sleep treatments first, because if, for example, there's a lot of sleep anxiety in a child or bedtime anxiety, or actually there's other things going on in their lives, or the bedtime's too early and they're spending too much time in bed or having too many naps. If you don't get those things right, then you're never going to be able to fix the problem with melatonin. And so first get the sleep basics right. And if it's not working, then melatonin might be something that's the answer. And for some people, they are on it longer term, but I would never say that they're on it longer term without it being advised by an expert, particularly an expert in sleep.
If you had a kind of quick list of well, it might not be quick, of what things people can do to make sure to improve their sleep habits and that sort of thing, what do you generally recommend as a course of action for someone who is experiencing insomnia?
Particularly related to menopause or any?
Well, let's stick to the menopause topic, because it seems like what you were describing earlier basically is a major system dysregulation from this. And that is very similar to what people would experience with narcolepsy. A lot of us in the community talk about how it makes dysregulations, in your body temperature, in your fight or flight, in everything throughout your body. It causes this dysregulation, which is just a general lack of sleep does that as well, which even though they're different conditions, but they have the same result. What is the method that you would recommend to deal with the insomnia, especially in menopause?
Okay, so particularly with menopause, it's really important to take a really wide look at everything that's going on. So most people go through the menopause around the age of 50, but on average, the symptoms associated with the menopause can start 10 earlier. So if you're in your early 40s and you're starting to maybe have poor quality sleep, maybe you're having some mood changes, maybe you're feeling more hot or sweaty, particularly at night, but it could be any time of the day, then it's possible that that's related to perimenopause. And so take a step back. First, have a look at what the different symptoms that are happening during your life and think about each of them in turn. I would say if you're getting very significant menopause type symptoms, so hot flushes or mood changes or struggling with kind of day-to-day activities, it may be that you want to consider hormone replacement therapy, but that's not for everyone, and it's not something that you have to do, because there's good solutions even without it. The next thing is to think about a sleep environment. So making sure that your room is as dark as possible. It should be so dark that if you waved your hand in front of your face, you wouldn't be able to see it. And if it's not that dark, add in an eye mask, because actually darkness helps increase our melatonin production and improves our deep sleep. Next, make sure your environment is quiet. So if it's not naturally quiet, consider earplugs or adding in white noise. Next, think about exercise. We've mentioned exercise being really important. The next one would be alcohol. Alcohol has a significant impact on sleep, particularly during the menopause. What it does is it's a sedative, so it feels like it gets you off to sleep quicker. Many people use it as a crutch to get them to sleep, but actually it can be really detrimental to sleep quality. It inhibits our dream sleep, and it makes our sleep much more fragmented and broken. So if you're someone who's having sleep problems associated with the menopause, quite often you wake up at 2, 3 in the morning and find it very difficult to get back to sleep. You might be bouncing in and out of sleep. And actually, if you have alcohol, that will be much worse. It will also make hot flushes much worse. And the hot flushes are associated with more wake ups in the night. So trying to cut out alcohol and replace it with a non-alcoholic alternative is likely to be a really important factor if menopause symptoms, sleep, and hot flushes are part of the picture. The next thing is to think about your behavior during the day. So making sure that you're not having too many naps. And obviously that may be a little bit different if you're suffering with narcolepsy, where you might need those to get through the day. But for most people, you want to try and keep your naps short if you have them, less than 20 minutes, and try and keep them earlier during the day if possible. And then next is think about your bedtime routine. So preparing your body and mind for sleep, ideally setting aside at least half an hour, if not an hour before bed, where you're starting to wind down and switch your nervous system from that kind of daytime busyness to the sleep mode. And that will involve dimming the lights, having a hot bath or shower, which helps drop our body temperature, which is needed for instigating sleep. It ideally would involve a little bit of breath work. So that's breathing, where you're controlling your breath, particularly extending your out breath, which has been shown to decrease anxiety and help the onset and quality of sleep. And you might consider something like the body scan, which is a kind of meditation relaxation that you can do before bed to help improve sleep. So developing your own bedtime routine is really important. And then the next one is making sure that you only go to sleep when you're really tired. So the point where you can't stay awake. Often with people, when they have insomnia, they start bringing their bedtime forward. So they say, oh, I'll go to sleep at 8 o'clock because I'm just so exhausted. And then they fall asleep for a couple hours and then they're wide awake. Often, if you're having difficulty with your sleep, actually you need to push your bedtime a little bit back till you're absolutely exhausted so that you can improve your sleep quality overnight. That's because when you sleep, there's something called your sleep pressure, which builds up over the day. And the more sleep pressure you have, the easier it is to stay asleep through the night.
When I finally decided to take the advice of the doctor, because I was very in denial and very rebellious about it in the beginning, was when I took strictly into consideration my sleep hygiene, the way my room was, how comfortable it was, how comfortable it was, where the position of my bed was, my pillows, everything became a deal. You know, the sheets on my bed, I got very snooty and bougie about my sheets for a while there. So it was very real, though, the change that took place when I finally got everything in line the way that I wanted it to be and felt good about it. It changed everything for me. So even if my house is destroyed, which so many of us with sleep problems, and especially menopause in conjunction with, will have your house as an array because there's just too much. The focus just isn't there. But my sleep space, oh, yeah, it is dialed in. I have it straight because I just can't. Not anymore. I used to be able to, but not now that I've been able to get my sleep hygiene and my sleep schedule in line. That I don't, as you recommended and I don't know if you find this with people that are suffering with severe insomnia with the emotional issues that come with menopause and the night sweats, which can wake you up ready to peel the wallpaper off the walls, is that with the night terrors that come along with it, the horrible nightmares, the vivid dreams that will not leave you, and the fear that comes with it, that is, of course, tied to the emotion of the hormonal imbalances. But I don't know, especially if you're a mom or if you even live alone or you have pets, whatever, just security overall becomes such a heightened issue. Is the door locked? Are all the windows shut? Was that somebody in my driveway? What did I just hear? I mean, it's just so escalated that for me, I have claustrophobia too, though that's not a good thing. But for the complete darkness, if I wake and it's completely dark and I cannot see, I flip. I completely go into panic mode and I have to talk myself out of it. So with the combination of the nightmares and all that, I keep sound in my room real low, but something that can keep me attached to the reality to keep me from that complete anxious panic that I could go into.
And I think you make a really good point there, Vernon. These are general guidance, and each of these things will need to be personalized to your own situation. And as you say, one of the most important things with sleep is feeling safe and secure and making sure that your nest, your room environment that feels safe. That's why when, for example, we go sleep at a hotel or someone else's house, we don't sleep as well. That's because our brain is aware that it's something different. We don't feel as safe as we do in our own environment, so we don't sleep as well. So creating that perfect sleep environment is really important. And if that involves having a little nightlight on, but perhaps putting a rhyme or having some sound there in the background. Lots of people like to listen to radio on low, and that kind of just gives them that little bit of security. Find the things that work for you. And I think you make a really good point as well. You were very aware of the environment around you. This is very common with insomnia. What we get is a hyper aroused state. So this is where everything around you, the bedding around you, you can hear the bins being rattled by the cat or whatever happens. And all of those things you suddenly have a very heightened response to. Part of what we do, so one of the therapists that works best for insomnia, whether it's caused by menopause or otherwise, is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that's about turning down the kind of dial on that hyper aroused state at night, so that when you go to bed, you're able to fall asleep more easily, stay asleep through the night, and wake up refreshed at the right time, rather than kind of feeling all kind of on edge and frazzled throughout the night and waking up constantly. We go through sleep cycles, so 90-minute sleep cycles, where we go through these different stages of sleep. And in between each one, we wake up briefly, check the environment around us, whether that's consciously or subconsciously, before going back to sleep again. And if when we wake up, we don't feel safe, we don't go into those deeper stages, or we might be delayed to getting to that next stage. And so a lot of what we do is work on people being able to get back into good quality sleep and turn down that hyper aroused state where we're absolutely aware of everything and fearful and reacting with our kind of full fight or flight response as soon as something disturbs that environment.
The 30-minute to hour wind down is also one of the things that has helped my sleep, even with having specifically narcolepsy. That has really helped is definitely the wind down. And when my mind is particularly lit up, because so many of us we do suffer with some sort of almost OCD or attention deficit disorder of some sort. And whether that's caused by all the sleep deprivation or whatever the case may be, nonetheless, it's like having 17 screens open on your computer and we're all running at the same time. And so in order to reel my mind in, I very literally, I have children's coloring books and I have crayons. And I sit down and I make myself just color. And it begins to draw my mind to kind of slow it down and reel myself back into a time when my brain, my body, my reactions didn't have anything to do with all of the responsibilities and the chaos that today's life as an adult and a young person has to do. And it kind of just, I don't know, it calms me, it reels me in, and it quiets all that noise. So that I can.
I think that's absolutely perfect. And lots of people, when they think of meditation before bed, think of kind of a Buddha sat underneath the tree with their legs crossed. Actually, meditation is just being present in the moment and aware of our own thoughts. Often, our lives are so full with noise and disruptions and draws on our attention that actually we often don't have an opportunity to sit with our own minds and what might be going on. And that's why part of the thing that happens with insomnia is that as soon as we lie down, our brain all these thoughts come thundering in that often are cyclical, often negative, and are difficult to control, particularly at night when our brain, particularly the kind of frontal part, the control part of our brain, is feeling really sleepy. And so to give those a moment to those feelings before you go to bed to release them is really important. So you calm your mind and go into sleep with a quieter mind. And that could be coloring. It could be knitting. It could be watching a very calm documentary, whatever it is that does it for you. Find your thing. For the one I probably recommend most is breath work, because it's almost like a hack into your body. If anyone's had a fright, someone popped a balloon next to you, your breath becomes quick and fast. That's our body preparing to run in case there's danger. When we breathe slow and on the out breath extended, it's telling our body that we're in a safe place, we're okay. When our breathing is calm and slow, it tells our mind that it's okay to calm down. And so it's a really easy hack that we can do to almost shortcut our brain into that quieter mode. So there's lots of things. My company is called the Sleep Project, and on our YouTube channel, we have lots of breathwork exercises and meditations and a body scan that you can do all before bed so that you can help switch your mind off, because that's really important. And you can also do them in the middle of the night if you wake up, because the same thing happens. If you wake up at 2 and you think, I'm not going to be able to get back to sleep, you start doing calculations of how many more hours sleep you're going to get and think about all those things the next day. I'm not going to be able to do my job. I'm going to be late for work. I'm going to sleep through my alarm, and start almost catastrophizing. Then sleep gets blocked. So what you need to do is have tools in that moment to switch off your mind and distract it. And breath work, meditation, body scan. There's lots of other tools that we use during CBT-I to switch off the mind, but you're trying to distract your mind from that pressure that you have to get to sleep, because sleep is the one thing where if you try really hard to sleep, actually sleep gets blocked by design because you trigger that sympathetic nervous system. And if you think back to kind of falling asleep, most people don't remember falling asleep. That's because it's an automatic process. It's one of those ones we don't have control over. So we just have to distract our minds enough to let our body do what it needs to do.
I know that previously when we were speaking, you had mentioned sports and your connection to that as well in your practice. And one of the best meditations I ever learned was when I was playing sports when I was a teenager. And we were at a tournament. It was a 3-day tournament for state championships, and we kept winning. So we kept having to go to the next match, And it was in basketball. So it was very fast moving, lots of exertion. And so it was getting to a point where we were about to drop. We weren't going to be able to make it. And our coach, she's crazy, but she took us all in this room, and it was dark. It was a classroom inside of this school. And she made us all lie down. And then she did this 15-minute meditation with us without telling us it was a meditation. She's like, look, we're going to get energized. This is how we're going to do it. And so she did it. And to this day, I still use it. I will forever use it. It was a body flex and relaxation with breathing from your toes up, then the whole body. And I don't make it past my ankles anymore. I make it as like maybe to my knees, and then I'm completely out. But I have never forgotten it because it was the most invigorating thing that had ever happened to me that I've used since that day forward. And the meditation and the breathing and the flexing and the blood flow and the just concentrating on the body instead of concentrating on the mind without realizing, that you're working with both. It was amazing. And I think it's very underutilized when it comes to sleeping.
And I think it sounds like that was a form of the body scan technique. And it's an excellent one as a kind of gateway into meditation, particularly if you're someone who finds that as soon as you're quiet and sat still, your mind becomes very full. This is quite a good way of almost directing the mind in a way that helps switch it off. In fact, the body scan technique is one that is used for the military and is called a kind of military armor. So people in combat can use it to switch off after a day of combat and getting the sleep that they need to repair and to kind of prevent post-traumatic stress and issues that happen if you're not sleeping particularly well after a trauma. So yes, very much recommend that. And I'm very happy to share the link with our body scan technique with the group so that they can try that at home, because I think that's one that people will easily be able to grasp onto.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask about, the combination between, you talked about the mind being a big cause of insomnia, but I find myself that anytime I'm having insomnia, it's normally body related, where I have the restless leg syndrome, which I saw was also very correlated with menopause as well. So when people are having more physical symptoms than mental symptoms like restless leg syndrome or hot flashes or night sweats, that kind of stuff, what do you recommend for the getting past that physical discomfort so that you can relax enough to go to sleep?
Yeah. And I guess taking a step back, with menopause, there's probably 4 big issues that we see associated. The most common one is poor quality sleep. So you're sleeping, but you're not sleeping as deeply and you might be waking up frequently. Then there's insomnia, which is difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, waking too early, and it having an impact on your day-to-day function. The third one is obstructive sleep apnea. This is where your airway blocks while you're sleeping, waking you up frequently. That becomes much more common, particularly after the menopause in women, and is very much underdiagnosed and causes significant daytime sleepiness. And then you mentioned restless leg syndrome, and restless leg syndrome is very common, particularly in the perimenopausal phase, partly because if you're having heavier periods, you're more likely to be iron deficient. And if you're iron deficient, you're much more likely to have problems with restless legs. So with obstructive sleep apnea and restless legs, those 2 are ones where it's worth going to see your doctor, getting it formally diagnosed, and then there's specific treatments for that. The restless leg, if you have iron, even if it's within the normal range, but the low end of normal, it should be supplemented because that will make a difference. Now, coming back to your question about your feeling those physical symptoms in your body. And I think I would add in there hot flushes as one of the really common reasons why people sleep poorly during the menopause. And there's a really strong association between poor sleep and the frequency and severity of your hot flushes. So if you're having lots of hot flushes, it will keep you awake at night. But the relationship's a little bit more complex. We know that actually hot flushes can happen before you wake up, but also sometimes you can wake up and then have a hot flash. And actually, the main reason for this is that our temperature control is really important for maintaining sleep. And if you've ever slept in a hot room or been on a holiday where there's no aircon, you probably sleep poorly, because when we're hot, we don't sleep very well, and we have to drop our body temperature to instigate and maintain sleep. So all of our hormones, but particularly the progesterone and estrogen, are really closely linked to our body temperature. Our brains are full of both progesterone and estrogen receptors. So when we're going through menopause and our hormones are all over the place and jumping up and down, or where they're deficient, actually our temperature control and our sleep are really impacted, and those hot flushes can happen and wake us up from sleep. Or we wake up for other reasons and then we have a hot flush triggered by that. But the solution to some of those physical things, this includes kind of chronic pain and joint pain or urinary symptoms sometimes, is actually to try and improve the sleep quality, because when you're having more deep sleep, you're less likely to be woken up by those symptoms, and also retraining the body to go back to sleep easily after being woken up. Because sometimes if you have a hot flush, if you fall back asleep afterwards, straight afterwards, it's not a big deal. What becomes problematic is when you wake up because of the hot flash and you can't get back to sleep quickly. And so it's teaching the body to then switch off afterwards or be in deep sleep so those things don't disturb you in the same way. And so when we're able to kind of calm our body and mind, but also improve our sleep quality by doing all the things that we've discussed already, then any physical symptoms like hot flushes or pain in our joints or needing to go for a wee in the middle of the night are less likely to disturb us, and we're more likely to sleep through.
Okay.
One of the things that we have spoke about yet is one of the issues that I myself and that several other people, I know other people my age that have done this, have gone through, is the drastic influx in their libido. Whether they are like, are you serious? Nah. Or where do you think you're going? Kind of thing, And the worst part that all of us concluded to is that the one thing that will give you good sleep is good orgasm. And if you don't want it and you can't get there, or you can't even, it's not even in your wheelhouse, it's like, how are you supposed to balance what would be normal? Because your normal libido would drive you once a week, twice a week, something like that. Where when you are in menopause, it's, are you serious for a month and a half? And then all of a sudden you shift gears into, you think you're like 15 and you're running on I. And so it's like a tug of war, because emotionally you're so connected to that as well. But so much of that leaves. And sleep also, just for those that aren't even in menopause that do suffer with insomnia or any other sleep disorder, including having to deal with CPAP machines, stuff like that. All that stuff's calculable in how your libido is going to react, how your emotions are going to react, and especially during menopause. So,
yeah, I mean, you said it all there. When we're sleeping poorly, we don't fancy having sex. The two of them are really intrinsically linked. And so sometimes it's about slowly improving those things. I would say the first thing to talk about is vaginal symptoms and making sure that you're comfortable down there. It's very, very common to have vaginal dryness, having soreness. Finding sex is just not as much fun because it's sore. And so the first thing to do is to make sure that your vaginal symptoms are under control. Even if you don't want to take HRT, hormone replacement therapy, you can use topical estrogens that can help supplement the skin down there. And if you want to avoid them, there are other lubricants and kind of supplements that you can take topically to the vaginal area that can really help you to feel more comfortable. And so the first thing is make sure that that feels comfortable. Then slowly try and improve your sleep quality. And also think about the emotional side of things. If you're just not feeling great in yourself, you're probably not feeling your most sexy. And so often it's doing lots of little small things to improve how you feel. Sleep is a part of it, because after a bad night's sleep, you're more moody, you're less likely to connect with whoever your partner is. Your menopause symptoms are going to be feeling worse. You're not going to have as good libido because all of those sex hormones are controlled while you're asleep at night. And so trying to tackle as many of these little things as you can. And I'm not saying it's going to be a silver bullet and you're going to feel like you're 18 and again and wanting to shag everything, but sometimes just little by little you can start improving things. And for some people, going on hormone replacement therapy, considering testosterone therapy if their libido is low and their testosterone is low, can be something that's really helpful. But also thinking about that relationship and the connection with someone else, because if sex has been painful, if there's been months where you haven't had sex just because you haven't felt like it, it's going to be difficult to kind of start that process of reconnecting again. And also remembering that there are ways to connect with your partner without sex. If sex is something that's not working for you, you don't fancy anymore. But ensuring those emotional connections is so important.
I agree. It's just so not easy.
Most of the menopause symptoms, I saw a really interesting thing talking about how menopause and its impact almost comes as a surprise to each new generation of women. And I was reflecting on that because before you go through the menopause, you can't quite imagine how bad it can be and how much it will impact on every aspect of who you feel like you are, your anxiety symptoms, because anxiety is a really common symptom of menopause, but one that's probably not about a huge amount, about your confidence at work or in relationships, about your energy. And so it undermines a lot of those things that make you feel like who you are. And so I think as women, we need to talk about, and I think we're getting better at it and trying to help younger generations understand it so it comes as less of a surprise. And also knowing that when you're starting to feel really bad, there are things that you can do about it. And taking those steps early can be really beneficial. And whether that's going for hormone replacement therapy, if that's what you want, or if it's that you're having poor sleep, then getting CBT-I sleep therapy, because that really works as well as HRT if sleep is the problem. And if you're having hot flushes, getting those under control, whether it's with HRT or a different medication, can really improve your sleep quality and your quality of life. So as soon as you kind of think, I'm not feeling right, go and get help. And I think a lot of people, when they first start with menopause symptoms, that kind of creeps into everyday life. Kind of, you're a bit more snappy with your partner, or you find that your emotions are a little bit more all over the place, or you find that you're waking up in the night, but it's not a big thing to begin with. And so sometimes it can be really difficult to kind of pinpoint, I don't feel like me. And sometimes over a period of maybe weeks, months, years, these changes happen. And I can't tell you how many people who I've started treatment with, where they suddenly go, oh my gosh, I had no idea how bad I felt until I felt good again. And so just recognizing that if you don't feel right, have a conversation about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to start treatment, but at least you're having that dialogue. And sometimes just talking about it makes a difference.
Venting is always one of the best things that you can do. Having someone that'll just listen to you, whether you're screaming, crying, or laughing and acting a fool, it's always better to have someone that just lets you let it out. That way you don't take it out on other people. I know.
And those things are in your brain, and kind of you're in that kind of cyclical mode of thinking about stuff but not resolving it, then it's going to impact your sleep even more. So sometimes the first step is just to say, I don't feel right. And have that conversation.
The fact that no matter what it is that is wrong with you, whether you have the flu, you broke your arm, whatever the case may be, had a heart attack, the very first recommendation that a doctor makes to you is you need to get rest. Except for when so many of us, in whether it's menopause or it's a sleep disorder or whatever it is that stresses you out, causes you an emotional reaction that causes these instances, then that's the one thing you're not going to achieve. And without achieving that, you're definitely never going to get past the first step of getting better. So
Yeah.
you've got to identify the sleep.
And I think if anyone it takes like one thing from this, listening to this, is that if you're sleeping poorly during menopause, it is possible to sleep better. And it shouldn't be one of those symptoms that you live with. And often it's about getting that right combination. The gold standard treatment for insomnia is CBT-I, and it can have profound impacts. For example, my last client, they were sleeping less than 2 hours a night. I did a review a couple of weeks ago, and they are now sleeping 7.5 hours consistently. And so that's an extreme, but better sleep is possible. And the first step is to say, right, this needs to change and get some help.
Yeah.
And on average, most people get at least an hour of extra sleep per night with sleep. And that's, if you take it over a week, that's almost like a whole extra night's sleep.
Yeah. I sleep an hour and a half. And then I'm awake. So it's intermittent. And so that's where my issues lie with my own personal sleep disorder. But definitely when I was going through menopause, it was about half that. And it was ugly and it was not helpful to anything in my life. And at that point, I was medicated. I'm no longer medicated for narcolepsy at all. I take no prescriptions for it. So I just have, made my own mode of dealing with it. And I've got it way more under control than I ever did when I was on medication, but I needed it at that point in my life. Medication was necessary. The same as during menopause. The medication was necessary. Doesn't mean it has to be forever. Like menopause is a very temporary stage in your life, whether it lasts a year or it lasts 5 years or even longer, depending on, when the perimenopause kicks in and you actually finally identify it. I think it goes on a lot longer than people think because they don't identify it for so long. But just the same, medication is definitely something that can help you, especially when it comes to this kind of thing. And I think that everybody needs to, for sure, absolutely. As soon as you start noticing that you're not sleeping good, that's sign number one. I bet you'll find all the others when you realize, when you get a little bit of good sleep, you're going to see all the other symptoms that are actually there that you've been avoiding or disguising or not even recognizing because you have not been sleeping. So
Earlier you mentioned the Sleep Project as something that you were involved in. Did you start the Sleep Project, or is that a project that you work with other people about? What inspired that, and what kind of impact are you hoping that it will have?
So the Sleep Project is a collection of clinicians who are all dedicated to improving lives through better sleep. We came together after COVID, where we saw a massive increase in sleep problems, partly because people were working in the bedrooms, exercising in the bedrooms, more stressed, more worried about everything that was going on, and has had a big consequence on both mental health and anxiety and sleep. And there's a really close interplay between anxiety, depression, and sleep. They kind of go, it's like a chicken and an egg situation where poor sleep and causes your mental health to be worse. There's a 2 to 3 times increase in anxiety and depression when you're sleeping badly, which is why it's important to treat it. But also, almost every single mental health condition has poor sleep and as one of the symptoms. So we were seeing loads more sleep problems. And so we came together as a sleep project, and we work with individuals, with businesses, and in elite sports, helping to improve sleep. But we also work with healthcare organizations, both doctors and with people like you, to try and get the word out about how people can improve their sleep, training doctors to recognize insomnia and to treat it better, and helping as many people as we can get a better night's sleep. And I guess just to our website is www.thesleepproject.life. We've got lots of free tools, blogs, information, and we do one-to-one consultations or CBT-I programs for anyone who's looking for support. Please do get in touch, send us an email. Would love to answer any questions if we can. And hopefully this is your first step to better night's sleep.
Do you have any chapters or physicians in the US currently that you are partnered with, or?
No, but we do everything online. So anyone who's in the States, we're really happy to work with you. It just means that it'll have to be towards your afternoon so that we're awake.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, did you have any last thoughts that you wanted to share with the listeners?
I think we've covered quite a lot, and I'm really loved where the discussion went and all the kind of the intent and things that came out through the discussion. So I think we've covered as much as I would like to cover, but hopefully people have taken away something that they can bring into their own lives.
Well, thank you so much to Dr. Caitlin Chasser for being here with us today for our medical series. We appreciate you very much for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you very much. I had a lot of comments and crazy questions, but usually it gets to a good point. So I really appreciate you taking the time to answer the questions and to interact with us so that we can get more people aware and a little more observant of the circumstances of what's happening to them and how much their sleep is valuable to every aspect of their life, not just a good night's rest and a day without naps. So thank you again.
Lovely listening to you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Narcolepsy Navigators is excited to announce our new Patreon and merch store. You can choose to support us monthly via Patreon and receive bonus content from our advocacy and medical series, as well as a shout out on the show. Subscribing to our Patreon will allow you to have access to Narcolepsy Navigators Discord server, where you can chat with other navigators, find support, and ask questions to be featured in future bonus episodes. Higher tier supporters can also receive Patreon merch, or if a monthly subscription is not in your budget, you can check out even more merch on our website, www.napsforlife.com. This week, we would like to have a shout out to our very first Patreon supporter, Jane Powell. Thank you very much for your support. Narcolepsy Navigators is produced by a team of volunteers working for the Naps for Life CIC, which is a non-profit group dedicated to improving the lives of people with sleep disorders through community action. You can help grow our podcast and join our sleep disorder support group by visiting the website www.napsforlife.com. If you or someone you know has a sleep disorder and would like to share your story on Narcolepsy Navigators, please email us at narcolepsynavigators@gmail.com. You can also support us by donating at the website. Happy napping, everyone!